Welcome and thank you for standing by. All participants are in listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I would like to turn the call over to your host, Kim Brown. Kim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Victoria. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Women and Minority-Owned Businesses and Entrepreneurs. My name is Kim Brown, and I'm a training specialist here at the U.S. Census Bureau. I want to thank you for joining us today for the Back to Data Basics webinar series. The series was created by the Census Academy team here at the Census Bureau. You can register for any of the webinars at the Census Bureau's homepage. Just visit census.gov/academy. We think these webinars will be a valuable opportunity for you to learn from our experts about how to access and utilize a variety of Census Bureau data products, tools, and resources. Before I introduce today's speaker, let's go over a few important housekeeping rules. As mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded. For your convenience, it will be posted to our Census Academy site within 30 business days. We'll post all supplemental materials, including the PowerPoint slides. In terms of how to ask questions during the webinar, you can submit your written questions using the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom center or right side of your WebEx screen. Please take a moment to locate that now. Once you found the Q&A panel, make sure you choose All Panelists from the drop-down menu. This will ensure we see your question. Don't send your question to an individual panelist. We also ask that you do not include any personal or business identifiable information with your questions. Now, let's talk about the chat panel. Look for that on your screen now. It's probably right next to the Q&A panel. Definitely keep that chat panel open also, because this is where we will provide key links and other resources. Keep in mind you won't be able to respond to the chat. Chat is just for us to send you links and other resources. In the chat box, we will be sharing through our webinar the link to our evaluation. We are very interested in hearing from you how we are doing. My colleague, Monica Dukes, will be monitoring the Q&A panel. As time allows, we will answer your question directly through the QA panel, or we will share your question with the presenter to respond to after the presentation. If we don't get to all questions with a response during the webinar, we will post the questions and responses with the webinar materials within 30 business days. Lastly, near the end of the webinar, we'll put into the chat a link for the evaluation so you can tell us how we did today. We hope you'll take the time to complete, as we're always looking for ways to improve our training. As you know, we are in a virtual environment and sometimes technical difficulties might occur. If you have issues, try a different browser, such as Chrome, or consider logging out and coming back into the session. If you are having audio issues, try selecting the computer audio or calling into the webinar via phone. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker, Noelia. Thanks again for being here, Noelia. You may begin.
Thank you, Kim. So welcome, everyone. My name is Noelia Museñac, and I am a data dissemination specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau. I'm one of several DDSs throughout the country that are available to conduct trainings, give presentations, and provide assistance with inquiries for several types of stakeholders. Now, I particularly am responsible for the state of Florida. However, my colleagues and I cover each other's property from time to time, so you're guaranteed to get some help. So today we are presenting information about businesses, women and businesses. So let's go over our objectives really quickly. So we'll start with a little bit of background about the Census Bureau as a whole. Then we'll go on to different data sources that are available, including the American Community Survey, the County Business Patterns and Non-Employer Stats, the Annual Business Survey, and Non-Employer Stats, Demographics. We're going to find different ways to access the statistics through our Census Business Builder and a bunch of other tools. We'll go over a summary of what we learned. We'll try and get into a demo, and then we'll open up the lines for, open up the chat for a Q&A. So let's start with an overview about the U.S. Census Bureau as a whole. And yes, we do more than just count people. So the Census Bureau is actually the largest of 17 primary federal government statistical agencies. And during the decennial census, which we just experienced, it's the second largest employer in the United States. Now, while we are best known for the decennial census, or the census of population and housing every 10 years, we also conduct more than 100 censuses and surveys of households and businesses across the nation each year. Now, this includes the American Community Survey and more than 30 other household surveys. We also conduct over 60 economic programs, with the Economic Census being the largest and the most comprehensive. And this one takes place every 5 years in the years ending in 2 and 7. The Census of Government is the public sector's counterpart of the Economic Census. So these are only a handful of our surveys. And basically, the Census Bureau's mission is to serve as the nation's leading provider of quality data about its people and economy. And our goal is really to provide the best combination of timeliness, significance, quality, and cost for the data we collect and the services that we provide. Now, this slide shows the relationship between the frequency of data release and the level of detail. In general, the more timely the data, the less the detail. So you can see the Economic Census at the bottom of the pyramid because it takes place every 5 years, and it is the most comprehensive data source when it comes to business data. But as you move up the pyramid, the data is released more frequently with less detail. Now, here we have some key terms that may be helpful for you to know when you're using Census Bureau data. So NAICS is the North American Industry Classification System that's used to classify each business. A business is classified on the majority of the business activity. So for instance, if a business location manufactures a product in the back and has a retail store up front, it can be classified as a manufacturing establishment if over 50% of the activity occurring at that location is manufacturing. Next is the term establishment, as opposed to the terms companies and firms. An establishment is a single location. Firms can have multiple establishments under them. Then we have employers. Basically, the difference between employers and non-employers is that non-employers are self-employed with no employees in their chain of command. So think of a crafter or someone that you might find on Etsy. And then finally, Titles 13 and 26 are the codes that allow us to conduct surveys and ensure privacy and confidentiality to all of our respondents. So now I'm going to be walking through some of the steps that businesses can take and the data that we have at the Census Bureau that can help them. So when we think about the ways the Census Bureau could help entrepreneurs with opening and starting a new business, this slide provides a very simplified look at the 4 basic steps that entrepreneurs go through when they're starting a business. So first, we come up with the idea. So let's say someone's decided they want to open a Greek restaurant in Lee County, Florida. So that's my original idea, right? Step 2 is then to conduct market research to determine if opening a Greek restaurant in Lee County, Florida is a good idea, or is it maybe a neighboring town even better? Within the county, there are specific cities or towns that I might want to look at, right? What type of employment data or payroll data for the existing restaurants do we have? And on average, what do restaurants in this county pay their employees? So these type of stats could be very, very useful to businesses when they're deciding whether or not their idea makes sense. Now, periodically, in conducting that market research, they have to loop back to the original idea. Maybe opening that Greek restaurant in Lee County is not a great idea. Maybe opening it in one of the neighboring counties is a better idea. Or maybe not even opening a restaurant at all. Maybe I want to open a catering business. So that constant looping back and forth between step 1 and step 2, they're typical of how small businesses get started. So if you're jumping between step 1 and step 2 often, that's normal. Now, once you finish completing that market research, businesses and entrepreneurs go ahead into step 3, where they're looking at securing the funding that they need to open their business, determining an actual location and signing a lease for the particular physical location, and all of the other steps that are involved in sort of getting the business off the ground. And then finally, in step 4, the business opens. So even once the business is open, they periodically can loop back to step 1. For example, I've been running my business for a year. It seems to be doing okay, but could I be doing even better? Should I maybe consider adding some other product lines to my restaurant? Maybe do I want to offer services that I'm not currently providing, like a catering operation? Now, these 4 steps, the Census Bureau can help with 2. And when we help with step 2, it's important to think about the different types of businesses and how the Census Bureau data can fit. So when we think about the 2 basic types of businesses, they are B2B, or what we call businesses that cater to businesses, and B2C businesses, businesses that cater to the general public. Now, understanding what type of business you're interested in opening helps users understand which specific programs in the Census Bureau best meet your needs. So for example, if I was opening a business that caters to other businesses, the customers of my business would be other businesses. So that would be economic data. The competitors of my business would also be other businesses. So that would be our business data again. And finally, the suppliers, complementary businesses, and other sort of related businesses, again, would be business data. So those demographic stats might not be as important for a B2B business because my customers of my B2B would be other businesses. However, if I was interested in opening a business that caters to the general public, what we typically call a B2C business, we'd have the same questions as above, but those particular data variables would then be different because the customers would be demographic data. So for today's session, we're going to be walking through an example of a person who wants to open an automobile parts and accessory store, which is classified using NAICS code 441310. This is not a B2B business, it's a retail store, so it's a B2C business. So the customers of my business are going to be primarily people who own cars, your shade tree mechanics who live in a certain business within a certain distance of the business. The competitors for my automobile parts and accessory store would be other auto parts stores in the area, right? So knowing something about how many of them there are would also be great. And then finally, my suppliers are the auto parts wholesalers that I'm going to be buying those parts to sell in my retail store. Now, a second example that sort of builds on the same auto parts theme is an auto parts wholesale business. This isn't a B2C business. The customers of an auto parts wholesaler are primarily other businesses. So in this case, the customers would primarily be auto repair facilities, used car dealers, and retail parts stores that are in that particular area. However, knowing something about my customers' clientele, the customers of those retail parts stores or the customers of those auto repair facilities could really be useful because it would help me understand what types of products I want to sell to those auto repair facilities or those retail parts stores. So if I had a customer that had customers that were in a fairly higher income area, then perhaps providing more brand new parts would really be important. Whereas if a customer of my auto parts wholesale business was in a retail store that was located in maybe a slightly lower income community, maybe some of those recycled or those repaired or those refurbished parts are going to be half the cost, right? So these data are all really important, and the Census Bureau programs provide information that can help guide those decisions. So where can we find this info? So we start with the American Community Survey. This is a fantastic program that can help those B2C businesses understand the demographics, socioeconomic, and housing characteristics of the areas that they serve. So the ACS is on the leading edge of survey design, continuous improvement, and data quality. It's the nation's most current, reliable, and accessible data source for local stats on critical planning topics. The survey continuously samples roughly 3.5 million addresses each year to produce annual social, economic, housing, and demographic estimates. This data is used to distribute more than $675 billion of federal government spending each year. Our estimates cover more than 40 topics and support more than 300 known federal uses and countless non-federal uses. Examples of some programs that use Census Bureau data to determine funding include the Department of Agriculture with their National School Lunch Program, the Department of Health and Human Services with their Medical Assistance Program and their Head Start program, The Department of Housing and Urban Development with their Community Development Block Grant Programs and their Public Housing Capital Fund. And of course, the Department of Transportation for Highway Planning and Construction. There are 3 types of annual data releases. We have our 1-year and 5-year period data sets, as well as our 1-year supplemental estimates. Now, the content that's collected by the ACS can be grouped into those 4 main types of characteristics I mentioned before: social, demographic, economic, and housing. So our social characteristics include topics such as education, marital status, fertility, veterans, stability status, place of birth. The ACS also collects the basic demographic characteristics collected on the decennial census, such as sex, age, race, Hispanic origin. Our economic characteristics include topics like employment status, income, commuting to work, occupation, industry, health insurance. And then our housing characteristics, those include characteristics such as tenure, information about the occupancy and the structure itself, which includes home value and housing costs. So as I mentioned before, each question on the ACS is used for federal and state government programs. And these topics are used to produce more than 1,000 tables for local communities, leading to more than 11 billion estimates each year. Now, the ACS provides data for more geographies on an annual basis than any other household surveys. There are over 13,000 geographies for our 1-year estimates, 15,000 geographies for our 1-year supplemental estimates, and a whopping 776,000 geographies for the 5-year estimates. Now, understanding census geography is not always as simple as it would seem. There are traditional methods for dividing geography in the United States that most people are familiar with, such as our states, our counties, and our zip codes. But the census uses its own methodology and terminology for geography as well, with the most prominent of which being a division known as the census tract. Now, the image on this slide shows some of the geographies for which the ACS data are produced and the relationship between them. So as you can see, the lower geographic areas fit neatly within the larger areas directly connected with the lines. For example, school, congressional, and state legislative districts fit neatly within states and don't cross state boundaries. However, they may cross boundaries of counties or metropolitan areas. And in this slide, you can also see that the smallest geographic building block is the census block. The ACS data are most commonly needed at the state, county, place, census tract, and block group geographic levels. This slide shows the relationship between these common geographic types and how they're nested within one another, as this example shows in El Paso, Texas. So census tracts are small statistical subdivisions within a county with populations of 1,200 to 8,000 people. So think your small towns, your rural areas, your neighborhoods. Our block groups are a group of blocks within a census tract with about 600 to 3,000 people, as you can see blown out in the right corner of the screen. Now, although we cover several different levels of geographies, the ACS's unique ability to report on a wide range of geographies is really what gives it its broad appeal. So now that we've gone over the basics of the ACS, its variables, and some of the geographies, I'd like to highlight some of the differences between the ACS and the census economic programs. So first, the ACS is at the household level. It's not at the establishment level. And then also, when we're talking about industry, ACS is categorized with its industry by census industry codes, whereas the economic programs utilizes the NAICS. The ACS can't use NAICS because we're a household survey. NAICS is based off of establishment surveys. Since we're not based off of where people work, but based where people live, we had to create our own code, so that's the census industry code. And then lastly, we do have differences in our geographies. Econ goes by zip codes, but we have something similar. We have statistical boundaries that are called DICTAs, or zip code tabulation areas. What if you're looking for tribal business? When you're looking at economic programs, tribal businesses are denoting the establishment itself that has identified as tribal. But with the ACS, you're going to be looking at tribal areas. So those boundaries are around a geographic area. And then there are also public establishments. So if someone's looking at creating a business to help support services for local government, the economic programs will show data based off that establishment itself, the local or state government. When you're looking at ACS data, again, you're looking at the geographic area, not a place. Okay, back to the ACS. So the ACS is the primary data source to understand local conditions and trends throughout the U.S. So it's a rich source of info for our businesses. The ACS provides critical info that businesses need to make investments and operational decisions to help generate economic activity, boost employment, and improve the standard of living in communities across the country. So examples of how ACS data are used, you can use it to determine when and where to open new facilities or expand existing ones based on population and demographic trends. Likewise, you can create effective marketing or merchandising strategies to better serve customers and investors. You can use ACS data to inform hiring decisions and workforce evaluations, or to forecast growth in sales to make better strategic decisions. You can invest in infrastructure improvements and also perform risk analyses. You feature several videos in the library section of the ACS website that showcase how ACS data are being used by the business community. One example is how Target uses ACS data to better serve their guests. We also have another video of how the Greater Houston Partnership uses ACS data to help them understand how their population is changing and encourage economic development in Houston. So participating in the ACS gives communities the information they need to attract businesses. So this real-life example of how ACS data used with the Maricopa Association of Governments, they use ACS data to create commute shared reports. So these reports show the area from which a worker can commute in 30 minutes or less to a given location and provide a useful picture of the residents, the workers, and employers near that given location. So these reports were meant to be used for economic development opportunities within a potential business locating throughout their region. Another cool use of ACS data, but also of economic data as well, a highly successful high-end component manufacturer for a mountain bike considered opening his own bike shop to sell his manufactured components along with mountain bikes and other components. So he used ACS data to identify the potential customers. He was looking for young professionals with moderate to high median household income that he could then market his new business. He also used Census Business data to identify locations where sporting goods stores are located. And these data not only identified possible competitors to his business, but also potential businesses to collaborate with by opening a lease department within a larger store. Now, there are a lot of different ways to access ACS data, and I'll share just a couple of selective ways to access ACS data through our various data tools. So first of all, we have Quick Facts, and as the name implies, it's very quick, a very quick way to grab facts fast. It shows key stats at various geographic levels that you could see either as a good printout of the data table, or you can even make a dashboard and map it out and compare stats to the surrounding geographies. We have My Congressional District and My Tribal Area. Those are tools that pull key stats for a particular congressional district or tribal area. We have On the Map for emergency management, which helps emergency professionals and planning personnel to be able to utilize ACS data, take a look at current emergency or pandemic, or even historic issues within the United States, and figure out figure out for planning purposes where to send resources, who to help, things like that. Of course, we have Census Business Builder, which is a suite tool that marries economic data and ACS data together. We have our Tiger Line shape files, which are files that you can map out data and create your own map. And what's nice is we also have these shape files with selected ACS data, so you can create a map very quickly according to your needs. We have the API, the application program interface, which is a quick way to access ACS data for your different apps or programs. The new program, the COVID-19 Data Hub. This is a program where that provides economic and demographic resources concerning the current pandemic of COVID-19. And then lastly, we have data.census.gov, which is the Census Bureau's main data dissemination platform. So as you can see, the American Community Survey is an amazing resource that entrepreneurs can use to help them understand the demographic, socioeconomic, and housing characteristics of their customers. But as valuable as the demographic data are, they're only part of the data that an entrepreneur or a business owner needs. They also need business data about other businesses in the industry so they can compare themselves to other businesses like them. So the first two programs I want to talk about are programs called the County Business Patterns, or the CBP, and the Non-Employer Stats, or the NES. So the County Business Patterns is an annual program that we publish every year that publishes information on employer businesses. These are businesses with one or more paid employees who filed a payroll tax form with the IRS. These are the businesses that we typically think of in our communities, right? And if I was opening an auto parts retail business in Orange County, Florida, I'd want to know something about the other auto parts businesses that are already there to determine, is this market already being well served by the businesses there, or maybe is there room for my little business? So the data that I publish includes stats from a number of businesses, or what we call an establishment, employment, and payroll. You'll notice that we do not have data in County Business Patterns on sales, shipments, receipts, revenues, or other measures of output. For that, we'd have to turn to other programs. But County Business Patterns is still an amazingly valuable program because it is very detailed by industry. It has these three basic stats. And it's also one of our more detailed programs in the term of geography. The data are published in County Business Patterns at the national, state, metropolitan area, county, congressional district, and even zip code, good old-fashioned U.S. Postal Service zip code levels. The data is also broken up by other dimensions, including employment of size of the establishment. So if we wanted to understand how important small businesses are in this particular industry, this program would provide that. Now, these data can be used by entrepreneurs and business owners to help them understand their customers for B2B type businesses, as well as their competitors and suppliers for all businesses. The employment size data can be really useful to help them understand what might the perfect or optimal size of my business be. As my business grows, is there a size that I ought to strive to grow to? The legal form organization, or LFO data, can be really useful to help entrepreneurs understand and plan for which legal forms they should file with the IRS. Now, the second program is the non-employer stats. You may be wondering, non-employer stats, what are those? Non-employers, what are those? So the non-employer businesses are what we typically think of as self-employed people. Just like the County Business Patterns program, non-employer stats publish data annually. These are businesses that don't file the payroll tax form, but instead file their business income on the 1040 Schedule C or the Schedule SC. Like the employer data in the County Business Patterns, we publish information on a number of businesses. We call them firms here. But this program does actually have information on revenue. The data is published at similar levels of geography. However, we don't go down to the zip code and congressional district in the non-employer stats program. There's also some size and legal form organization type data available here as well. Still, you may be wondering, how important are these non-employer businesses in this industry? And that's a really important question. If I were opening an auto parts and accessory store, comparing my business to those other employer businesses would be really important, especially when it comes to understanding potential customers, competitors, and suppliers, understanding the importance of revenue size data when determining your optimal business size, or planning for filing for the most beneficial legal form. So here are some basic stats related to our hypothetical example. So there are 39,000 self-employed people that operate automobile parts and accessories and tire stores. Most of them, 8,000 or so of them, earn less than $5,000 worth of annual revenue. So there are a lot of them, actually a quite high number. I was personally very surprised to see how high that number was. However, these are really, really tiny businesses, right? So maybe for opening my automobile parts and accessory store, I don't really need to worry about these. We can see that the vast majority of these businesses are classified as individual proprietorships, which isn't surprising, but those partnerships are the ones that generate on average the highest sales per business location. Each of those partnerships generate about $167,000 worth of revenue, whereas the proprietorships only generated about $50,000. So again, little tiny, tiny businesses. Now, the third program that I want to quickly talk about is something called the annual business statistics. A lot of times I'll get questions from users like, I'm a woman interested in opening an automobile parts and accessory store, and I'm kind of curious to find out how many other women-owned automobile parts and accessory stores there are, or how many veteran-owned automobile parts and accessory stores, or how many minority-owned automobile parts and accessory stores there are. So the key program that provides this information is the Annual Business Survey, or the APS. So this is an annual program that covers employer businesses, those businesses with paid employees. It publishes stats on the number of businesses, employment payroll, and it does actually include sales data. The data are published at the national, state, county, and even place levels, but the key dimension is they're broken out by race, ethnicity, gender, and veteran status of the business owner. So this is where you would want to go to see how many other women-owned automobile parts and accessory stores there are. So these data can be really valuable to compare the demographics of my business so that I'm thinking about opening, and the demographic characteristics of the industry as a whole to see how I compare to my industry. Now, this slide provides a brief snapshot of just some of the selected stats available on the annual business survey for the industry. Of the 16,625 employers, employ automobile parts and accessory stores in the United States, the vast majority of them are owned by white, non-minority, non-Hispanic, male, and non-veteran business owners. And we can see those rows highlighted in yellow on this slide. However, if you look at some of the key ratios of these businesses, things like sales per business, sales per employee, sales per every dollar of payroll, we see some interesting trends. For example, looking at the race breakouts, we can see that Asian-owned businesses, while there are fewer of them than white-owned businesses, they generate higher sales per employee and generate more sales for every dollar of the payroll. However, the white-owned businesses tend to pay their employees better. Looking at the non-minority versus minority breakouts, we can see that non-minority businesses dominate, but the minority-owned businesses, again, generate higher average sales per employee and average higher sales for every dollar of payroll. We can see similar sort of breakouts for the male and female. Male businesses do dominate, but female businesses actually do quite well for themselves. And finally, looking at the veterans versus non-veteran. Non-veteran businesses dominate, but again, veteran-owned businesses generate higher average sales per employee. So these stats can be really useful when working on a business plan or a loan application. Also, let's say you're a female veteran and you want to be able to show how many of other female veteran-owned businesses there are. These data can also be very useful. Now, you may have noticed that the ABS covers employer businesses just like county business patterns. You may be thinking that's really interesting. In my community, there are a lot of minority and women and veteran-owned little businesses, non-employer businesses, but ABS covers just the employers. So where can I get data on the race, ethnicity, gender, and veteran status of the self-employed people? So up until recently, you had nowhere you could go. The latest data we had was from a survey that we conducted in 2012 called the Survey of Business Owners, and that was the latest data available. The ABS came along and now is getting us annual information through 2018. But we're missing the data for those self-employed, those non-employer businesses. So we fixed that problem and we added a new survey called the Non-Employer Statistics by Demographic, which is our spotlight survey for today's session. So the non-employer statistics publishes similar race, ethnicity, gender, and veteran status breakouts as the ABS program publishes, but it covers those non-employer businesses. The data published are not quite at the same level of industry and geographic detail as is available in the ABS. It's a little bit less, so you only have national, state, and county, and the industry breakouts are only at the 2- and 3-digit levels. But at least it does give you some information that helps you add the self-employed people to the employer businesses to understand the importance of minority and women-owned businesses, for example, in this in certain industries. Now, continuing with the theme of our example, here's a slide looking at the data on motor vehicle and parts dealers. Again, you can see the situation where we're only seeing a 3-digit NAICS code, 441, which is a much broader category than the more detailed 6. But we can see that in this particular industry for non-employers, non-veteran white, non-minority, non-Hispanic, and male-owned non-employer businesses really dominate. Looking at the ratio of sales per non-employer business, we see some interesting patterns here. Now, some of you may have noticed that there are these categories on the left beginning with the word equally. So for example, at the very bottom of the slide, we see a breakout for female-owned, male-owned, and then equally male and female. So what that's referring to is a business that would be classified in that particular category because it's equally male and female owned. So we can see those type of businesses, maybe a business where a husband and wife own the business together. They generate more revenue per firm than their solely male or female owned business part. So we've talked about 4 to 5 programs now, right? The county business patterns, the non-employer stats, the ABS, and the NESD program. You're probably thinking, wow, that's a lot of data. So does the Census Bureau have anything else? Of course we do. So we publish a number of other programs that are disseminated on data.census.gov platform that I mentioned that provides information about the particular industry that you might want to look at. So the Economic Census, for example, produces basic stats at the national, state, metropolitan, county, and place levels, but they also publish detailed product lines data, what we call industry by products, using the NAICS system. These data can be really valuable to understand what are the products and services that automobile parts and dealers sell. We have concentration ratios data that look at how much the top companies in the industry make up of the total, as well as a variety of other size breakouts. And we also have similar data from the older 2012 Economic Census and Survey of Business Owners. And now the real star of the show. So Census Business Builder is a tool that allows the user to go in and select a particular type of business and a location that they're interested in researching. So let's say I'm sticking with wanting to research opening an automobile parts and accessory store in Orange County, Florida. So I could go through these 6 buttons on the left-hand side, see if my automobile parts and accessory store industry is listed in there, and I happen to know it's not. So instead, I can type into the search box at the bottom left-hand corner, automobile parts, and it would bring up a list of the industries related to that. I could then go over to the right-hand side, choose Orange County, Florida, and then click on Go to Map. The application would then zoom in on Orange County, Florida, and it allowed me to browse about 180 detailed stats from a variety of Census Bureau and non-Census Bureau programs. This is a fantastic resource that provides access to selected stats from the ACS, the county business patterns, the non-employer stats, the economic census, and a variety of other programs, including our international trade data. We have data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Department of Agriculture. There's even some consumer spending data from ESRI included in this tool. Now, this is a great tool that will allow users to very easily access those stats. But please remember that while Census Business Builder gives you a great tool to allow you to access selected stats from these programs, the full data set from the American Community Survey, all 3,000 or so of the data variables that the ACS publishes, are available in the data.census.gov application. So I always tell users, start your research about your business using Census Business Builder, but eventually you'll probably have to turn to data.census.gov when you want to dive down into more detailed stats than what is available in CBB. Now, in addition to CBB, I'll quickly mention that we have also a variety of other tools. Oopsie. On the left-hand side, it's something called the time series and trend charts. This is a tool that allows you to access data from our economic indicator survey that would allow you to see how's this industry doing in the last few months. We can see, for example, for NAICS code 4413, automobile parts and accessories and tire stores, we can see this oscillating sort of recurring nature of the way this particular industry works over the different months. We can see in 2020 the more rash drop in automobile parts and accessory stores during the pandemic, but we can then see that as we're exiting the pandemic, the real strong rebound in this particular industry. On the right-hand side is a tool called the USA Trade Online. That provides information on our imports and exports data that we publish at the Census Bureau. This is a free resource available to you, and it could be very valuable to a business owner who's thinking about opening a business that may someday want to export the products that they make. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you to our Census Business Builder homepage. You should be able to see my screen. So if you go to census.gov, and you click on or you hover over Explore Data, it'll take you to the data, to this menu, and you can click on data tools and apps. And that's what it'll give you a list of all the data tools and apps. And you can find Census Business Builder here. Once you click on Census Business Builder there, it'll bring you to this screen. Now we have two different versions of Census Business Builder. We have our Small Business Edition and our Regional Analyst Edition. That's pretty much for chambers of commerce, regional planning staff. But I'll show you what the Small Business Edition looks like. So you click on the icon to launch it. And just like in the slide, here is the home screen. So let's say I'm just gonna go into, let's go to retail. I'll click on retail, and let's say I wanna go into convenience stores, or actually let's try liquor stores. Let's keep it fun. And let's say I wanna look for it in, let's try Lee County, Florida. Now, you can either go to the map or you can create a report. So we'll start by going to the map. And automatically, it'll start with your variable being the total population. Remember, there's a lot of data in these databases. You have to kind of give it time to load. You can see at the bottom left corner, it kind of gives you a little summary, some surrounding statistics. If you hover over different counties, you should be able to get information on those. But then also in that bottom left corner, you see where it says Create Report. If you click on that, it'll give you a report about that area. And this is where I like to suggest that people start with their formulating their business plans. Again, you have to be a little patient, let it load. But this will give you a printable PDF that you can literally just take out and insert right into your business plan. And it'll give you information on the demographics, information on the businesses in the area. It's really showing off today with how long it's taking to load. Also, if you have any issues with any of our data tools where you're having trouble on a certain browser or it may be taking long, sometimes you just have to refresh or just switch to a different browser. They might be testing different days of the week. For time's sake, I'm going to try and refresh really quickly. Try one more time. Okay, just for the purpose of today's session, I won't be able to show you the report. We'll move on from that. But it is a really, really great tool once it does load, and it will give it to you in a nice PDF form. It's nice and tidy, visually, oops, looks like we were getting something. Visually pleasing, but definitely check out the report. You can also click on different areas of the map and check out the information on the surrounding areas, as I mentioned before. So I'll go back to my slide deck. Oh, look at that. Look at that report. Okay, so let's go through the report really quickly. What do you find in your report? You'll find information about your customers. The customer section, as it says, it provides a summarized demographics area information for Lee County. It'll give you information on businesses like yours and information on consumer spending. So if we scroll down, and you can scroll down or you can click on the menu items on the left-hand side. Here's information for Lee County about your potential customers, some demographic info, nice charts. Like I said, it's visually pleasing. Some socioeconomic characteristics. You can download this PDF and you can email it as well. Get our business summary, information on other businesses, on how many, the sizes of businesses in the area, the average payroll per employee, which is important as well. You can see some charts where it compares some years and different comparisons like Lee County versus the entire state of Florida. So it's really a cool report to check out. I particularly like to scroll all the way down to the consumer spending area, because it shows really where they're spending their money. So if I was opening that liquor store, I want to know what they're spending on liquor on average, right? I want to know what people's budget is like. So I know where I need to open my liquor stores, what type of items I need to house in that liquor store. Am I having just top shelf items? Am I kind of getting the bottom shelf stuff? So these are all great key data to know when you're opening your business. Okay, so now I can go back to my slide deck. And our summary. So to wrap up all this great info, let's summarize. So obviously the Census Bureau does so much more than just simply count the U.S. population once every 10 years. The data that we publish can be extremely useful to entrepreneurs and small business owners as they research their markets, to start up their businesses, and even once their business is running, to help grow their business. Our economy, our communities are constantly changing, and even businesses that do their research when they first open, they need to periodically go back and redo that research to make sure that maybe a particular sector, a particular community that used to be small, maybe it's grown now, and maybe might now be a great market for, particular products. Tools and data programs like the American Community Survey and those business programs that I talked about provide a lot of this data that could help address some of the aspects of the markets that business owners are going to reach out to, and merging these data across these programs, but also merging Census Bureau data with other programs data helps paint a more complete picture. As much as we love Census Bureau data, we also recognize that merging data with data available from third-party providers, from trade association, and even from other federal statistical agencies like the Bureau of Labor Statistics can really be incredibly useful. And finally, the data.census.gov platform is really our enterprise data dissemination tool. This gives full access to nearly all the data that we have at the Census Bureau, certainly much more than what's available in Census Business Builder. But we really want people to use our CBB data tool because it provides access to those key statistics in a very user-friendly type platform, regardless of how long it took my report to load. Okay, I think we might be ready for Q&A. We have anything?
Yes, thank you so much for that presentation, Noelia. And there were several questions that were in the chat, so I'll just go ahead and read a few of those to you. One question was, can you search? Can you use Census Business Builder if your business is virtual or online? It seems like you have to have a specific geographic location in order to use it.
You can use it if your business is online. You can zoom out to the country level, depending on the area that you do serve. So it definitely does have the capability of giving you information for, like for example, the entire nation if you have something that's national.
Okay, thank you. Next question, do you have to choose a geographic location or can you get data for all of the U.S.?
You can get data for all of the U.S. Most of the geographic locations always give you information about the United States to compare, but you can definitely get information for the entire United States as well as drill down to those geographies.
Okay, next question. You were showing 2017 data. Is there more recent data available?
There is more recent data available. I can send a link to the more recent information and how to get the information, as well as the time release schedule, and I'll include that in our handouts as we send them out.
Okay, so what definition do you use for minority-owned or women-owned businesses? Is it greater than 50% ownership?
So the question is, if your business is minority-owned and women-owned, I'm sorry, what was
I
the
think it says
question?
or, it's or minority or women owned. Is it greater than 50% ownership to qualify to be minority or women owned?
I'm not actually sure of the exact the ratio of what it has to be to classify. So I'd have to look for specifics on that, and I'll find the answer for that as well. And I'll include that in the answers for the Q&A, if that's okay.
Sure. There was a question regarding population. How do we classify a large or medium small population size? How is it determined?
Like the gauging like, for example, 0 to 100, 100 to, like, what is the gauge for large versus medium?
Yes, you can
That
respond with that. Yeah.
I'd have to also look at the exact gauge of what classifies as small and large. I don't want to shoot out a number, but I'll find the exact gauges of what classifies between a large and a medium and a large business, and I'll get that out to us as well.
Okay, and I'm just scanning through to look for questions that are related to the information that you've gone over today. There are a few questions that are in the chat that may not be related to your presentation today, but we certainly will answer at a later time. I just want to make sure that I've gone through all the questions.
Absolutely. And it's a lot of information. A lot of people are going to, be marinating on the information that I gave today, and you'll have questions, that you'll probably have later on while you're, lying in bed trying to go to sleep. But you can always reach out to us if you think of something later on as well.
Now, there's a question, is it possible with the Census Business Builder to disaggregate data by race?
For census, you can get demographic information, yes.
Okay, this question here. So there was a question. It's actually in two parts. So let me kind of ask this, but you can actually answer this question. So it says the SBA has data on what small business classifications and size standards are. For example, in a community, if you want to know the average income and spending habits of a Black family in a community. So it sounds like they were asking, do we have that type of data available, information on average income and spending habits of a family in a community?
Of a particular family, like if we're looking for the average Black family spends this much money in this neighborhood, is that what I understand the question to
Right,
be?
so about a geographic location, yes.
We'd be able to I want to say we'd be able to get the information in just one, like one table for that, but you may just have to like kind of cross compare. But let me just verify that as well. But I want to say yes, the information is available at that level. It may or may not be a one-click type extraction, but the information is available.
And the last question, it stated that you mentioned that there are other databases that interface, or do we need to go to those separately? So I think they're referring to all of the sources that are pulled into the Business Builder. Are you able to go to those separately to see the data?
You can go to those separately. We compile the data that we have from those other sources into Business Builder, but if you chose to go to just the county business patterns or whatever the case may be, you can just go to that data.
Okay, so thank you so much, Noelia, for answering those questions and providing that great
Sure.
presentation. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Kim Brown. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica, for turning it back over. We appreciate the role you played as moderator. I'd like to thank everyone involved for this excellent presentation. Before we conclude, I'd like to thank everyone who played a role in today's webinar. Also, of course, thank you to you, our audience, for spending your time with us this afternoon. Please take a moment to fill out the evaluation by following the link provided in the chat. Look out for the recording, the PowerPoint, the Q&A, and other materials on census.gov/academy under this particular webinar. We will have that information posted in about 30 business days. We want to remind everyone the next webinar in the series is using census data for grant writing. That will be offered on Tuesday, August 9th at 2 p.m. This brings us to a close, so we thank you again and hope you have a great afternoon.
This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for participating. You may disconnect at this time.